So we don't see this as exactly the end. We're more hoping this is the end of the beginning. And we're looking forward to the next MIW virtual conference. So that's one of the reasons we took the survey at the end of yesterday, and we're going to be making use of those survey results as we go through today. But I thought before we look at those, I'd just share with you what our original goals were for this conference as an organizing team. When we started our work, we said to ourselves, what is it we're trying to do? And I won't read all of this, but one of our ideas was that this is not an end in itself, this conference, but it should be a spark to stimulate thinking and activity which continues beyond the time. So that's mainly, in a sense, the theme of this day. We've called it Developing Our Way Forward. And we're hoping to accelerate the development of the mission information community together. Here was some subsidiary things that we were concerned about. I think we've addressed all of these. I was looking through and I was wondering whether perhaps the final one we haven't given as much focus as we were planning to. But we're thinking today we'll probably end this session with a session of prayer, end this day with a session of prayer. So we want to let you know that we have a provisional date for the next MIW conference. So April next year, again, a Monday to Thursday, probably again 2 hours a day. This is not totally fixed yet, but it will in part depend on some other conferences that may be fixed around that time. But this is our intention. As we began to develop for this conference, we had the idea that we should continue a series of virtual conferences. These will be virtual in order to allow as many people as possible to attend without the expense of an airfare and the environmental impact of air travel. Because it was notable at the first of these conferences, which was physical 6 years ago in Texas, there were actually very few people turned up from outside of the USA. So we're hoping that this virtual format makes it easier, and indeed, we have at this conference registered a minority of people from the USA. Most people have been from outside the USA.
Chris, excuse me.
Yes?
Are we meant to be seeing a shared screen?
Yes. Are you not?
I have a blank white screen.
That's intriguing.
And now I have a very large pointer arrow. And nothing.
I think I'm going to have to try again.
I thought it might be important.
Yes, thank you very much. I have been sharing my screen, and though the slides haven't, well, they have said quite a bit, yeah. Let me unshare and reshare. Maybe I shared the wrong.
You shared your pointer.
Oh, that was not what I was hoping to. My screen sharing is now paused. Let's stop it. And let's try again. Maybe I did share my pointer somehow. Okay.
Yes.
Is that better? Thank you.
Now we see words.
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that. That was me.
I thought you had some cool kind of thing there that, you know, you were masking stuff or
I
something.
did too. I should have spoke up. I'm so glad you were bold, Dan.
Okay, well, that was my first slide about our original goals and to accelerate development. That was my next slide about some others where I was talking about this last one in particular that we haven't been too good on that. That was the date in writing in front of you for next year. So put that in your calendars, although it is provisional. And what we'd like to do first is have a free discussion about what you think was valuable about this conference. Then we're going to go into looking at the specific ways you voted in the survey. But if people just want to say now, I'll be taking some notes, what they feel was valuable about this conference, that'd be good.
For me, from the South, it's hard to be in a presential conference, and to be here is like free, you know, and it's good to see the faces from so many people. I met you all.
Mm-hmm. Feel free to speak up. This is your community.
So again, the opportunity to meet and network virtually isn't quite as good as face-to-face with coffee, but yeah, it's easier. There are a lot of us who would not have been able to sort of travel either. Might be good to have had more kind of breakout groups, choose your own breakout room around a particular topic, but
well, we're certainly planning to have some today, Peter, so that might make up a little bit for it.
yeah.
It's pretty to handle the whole world at one time. I don't know if there could be between now and next year, there could be some arranged, you know, continental things like Africa, South America, Middle East, you know, where those are on specific projects where you could actually collaborate and discuss a little bit more in detail what they're doing and how they might work together.
Yeah, I'm not sure who was speaking then, but that was something we considered having some regional breakouts, but
That was Dwayne Falk.
it was Dwayne. Hi, Dwayne.
Glad you're here, Dwayne.
Thanks for the contribution. That's good. Okay. Anything else? I see in the chat, for me, it's good to reconnect with lots of people. And then complaints.
This is Lee Holcomb, Chris, and I think one of the things that was good for me was just to hear from a lot of the people who are on the inside of data quality and compiling data, you know, the HIS, and just hearing and seeing that machinery is in place was very reaffirming, and just knowing and understanding that we're sort of all in this boat together and trying to get good data and maintain good data.
Okay.
I've been impressed with this conference that it has allowed some, like Jennifer, who spoke before the top of the hour this morning, it has allowed some who are not as involved or as committed to mission information work as would be required to actually fly somewhere. It has allowed some of the fringe or the early participants to attend and soak in this and learn from it. So the cost, which there was none except time, has allowed so many more to come and learn.
Thanks, this is Jennifer. And also I thought that it was interesting because the same struggles that you had yesterday with the people who are working so hard on the data, and then the people on the ground not knowing how to apply the data, is really something that I see in other work. So I really resonated with that.
Chris, next, please take a question from Elaine and Stephanie.
Okay. Alain, Danielle?
Yes, maybe not so much of a question, but well, the presenter,
Comments, yeah, whatever.
yes, sir. Just an idea. Those who have presented, I don't know if there is a way to also make it to where for the next gatherings, whether online or in person, to have some type of summary, written summary that can be handed out of the presentation or something like that. It would be very helpful. Just that one is not too concerned about trying to take notes or screenshots while they're speaking.
Okay. We will be sharing with all of you by email the recordings of the conference tomorrow. I expect to send those out. So you will have the recordings which you can fast forward to particular places of interest and rerun the way the conference has been. Stephanie.
Yes, sir.
This is the flip side of what Dan was saying, in that a virtual conference has a leveling effect because all of our pictures are the same size here on the screen. And in the same way that global data isn't any more important than regional data, which isn't any more important than local data. And in fact, it's the local researchers, the ones who are on the ground doing the counting and the interviewing, that provide the data for those who are higher up in the chain, so to speak. Yesterday, Mike mentioned how he doesn't actually do research. He just uses the research that others gather, the data that others gather in his interactions with other agencies. And so the beauty of a virtual gathering like we've just had is that everyone's voice is sort of leveled. Yes, we'll always have the Patrick Johnstones, the people who have, the statesmen who have plotted a way forward for us. But even Patrick, I think, would agree that he depends on local researchers and the work that they do. So when you put together a face-to-face conference, you have a tendency to invite important people or people with a certain renown. But I have appreciated hearing the opinions and listening to the questions of folks who aren't yet important, but they are important. They're not yet famous, but they're important.
Good, thanks.
Danny Weiss.
I would just add to that the 2 hour a day format is really accessible and achievable. It's not too much of a burden, whereas a 5-day conference in person would be quite taxing and unattainable for several people on this call currently. And I would love to see this group as a base expanded even beyond this going forward. I think that's the goal and the vision, of course. But this industry, this niche industry that was 15 people just 2 years ago is growing quite quickly, and there are so many people and voices involved that would have a lot to add to this conversation.
Great. Okay, I think I'm going to move on to some specifics, looking forward to the next conference. The way we're going to do that is to go on to this next slide. Can you all see? I need to check a slide with some ranking.
Yes.
Thanks. Okay. So here we have the result of voting in our survey yesterday. These are the results of the question we had about what topics do you want to learn more about. So we're going to start at the top here. And Lara, would you keep an eye on the time? I'm finding myself not very aware of the time here, but we need to stop at a certain point. We're just going to keep going down here. We'd like to ask you, and this is for all those who may be involved in organizing the next conference, whether they're in the current organizing team or maybe people will join us over the next 6 months. We want to know, why are these topics important to you? What do you need to learn in this area? And are there any people you think would be good to teach us? That could include people who've already been involved in the conference, but it could include people not. So we're just going to have a discussion on that. So let's start with global gaps. We could overlap with people group gaps. The gaps in global data, we had Eldon Porter talk to us about his view of global gaps, but I think there's a lot more that could be said in that area. And some of the people most closely involved in people group data were talking about what they don't yet have. So why are those areas important to you? What do you need to learn in those areas? You can just, given the way things are going, you can raise your hand if you want, but to be honest, I think you can just speak out straight. We seem to be very disciplined in this group, I'm pleased to report. So
I'll jump in real quick, Chris, and say that I think that this group is uniquely designed to be concerned about gaps, whereas some just kind of leap into some action that's not well informed or doesn't try to address gaps. I think that so many of us here in this conference are, even while we're pushing forward, we're trying to say, what are we missing? And to do so, I think, avoids a lot of confusion, hurt, and poor planning in the future.
Thanks, Dwayne.
If I may, Alan Daniel here. I can see how also global gaps of great interest for anyone. I think the very idea of research is to fill gaps in knowledge. The very idea of analysis is to fill gaps in responding to needs. So just becoming more aware of what's needed helps us know what to do next, where to focus next. So becoming aware of the weaknesses in the current state of affairs and the and the opportunities for questions to be answered, like gaps in data sources. Like, do we have data from everywhere really, or do we only have data on certain areas? Do we have people participating in a community like this, mission information workers from everywhere, or do we only have those with great access to the internet or great access to this or that? So I think just by the very nature of this community, I'd say it makes sense that gaps, global gaps, or I see again PG gaps in second position will be of interest.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
This is Dwayne Falk. You know, one of the things, there's multiple organizations even represented in this that are, we have the people groups, but then you have places. And so working down from those top admin levels, like country, state, but all the way down to the granular, getting down to village level. Getting that data, you know, is building that lattice of just even village list for multiple countries. And of course, there's going to be, you know, I think right now that the initial startup on that is just for location and not asking any other questions, just, you know, basically where's the gospel flowed and where is it not? And then getting into people groups or languages or those other details or the strength of the church, but just building out the lattice. So just that mechanism. And I know there's lots and lots of people who are working on apps and technology, but there's a real gap on getting data flow and the sharing of information. And then a feedback, getting that back, you know, people who put into, you know, who is the data for? Is it for the top level or is it for the grassroots? And I think it's for everybody. But if it does not serve those that are entering the data, why should they even share that data? So that gap of, you know, how does it benefit and how do we get those maps and village lists and language lists and people group stuff down to the local people where it benefits them and their ministry.
Okay. I'm hearing a fair amount on the first two, what, why, and what. On the who, I'm getting the impression that we are able to teach us about global gaps, that together, I'm getting the sense from a number of people that together we are the right forum to consider this. Any other questions?
May I suggest taking off on that, Chris, that hearing, we often hear from kind of a global perspective. Here we've tried to hear from a regional perspective. I think that's been so key here to hear the, hopefully hear some frustrations from the regional up, you know, to the global level. So I would like to suggest that who would be good to teach us would be, you know, not the usual suspects, so to speak.
Okay, yeah.
Also along that line, this is Kirk Wilson. I think there are other collections of information that are trying to be collated and put together that we, as information workers, are not necessarily aware of, and that is something that's important to be apprised of. You know, whether it's in identification of how different types of media are being used in different locations and what impact those are having, to even identification of the types of workers that are out on the field. And some of those come from other conferences and other groups of people that are could benefit greatly by the collaboration with this group.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kirk. Let's move on to his Harvest Information Standards. That was pretty near the top. Why is that important to you? What do you need to learn in that area and who would be good to teach us?
If I may jump in again, the harvest information system was a standard section, was a very interesting part. Just personally, the work I do as data onboarding specialist at Progress Bible, I need people to give me data with standard, following standards. It just makes my life easier, but also for the sake of good stewardship of the data that's being contributed. If I receive it in a way that makes sense, then I know exactly where it belongs and in the data warehouse and in the reports and so forth. So just knowing that there is a team of people concerned with getting all of us to agree on what we call what and how do we represent the this or that, that was very invaluable. So I'm glad to know, Chris, you're part of that team, and we definitely have a lot we can learn from you, from Ms. John, and the rest of the team in that area. So just very thankful for that section and for that aspect of things, and also the people you all are here as far as the who will be good to teach us. I think if Miss John could speak a little bit more next time, if she is available, that would be awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that would be Joan Spanny. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she's good to listen to.
And this is Kirk Wilson again. This is an area specifically where I think that the standardization of identification of both languages and ministries and locations, etc., is critical to being able to have commonality of information flow, particularly in the work I do. I find that very difficult to try and pull together information from different sources because they don't use the standards. And as our previous brother was saying, that is a critical issue. There are a couple other standards that probably are critical of importance going forward that we need to consider looking at as well.
I'll add to that the encouragement to people to use the standards, but also developing some tools to help people make better matches and guesses where the standard isn't being used. So you've given me this language, you can tell me, good, this one has a one-to-one match with this code, hooray. This one could be one of 6. Now help me to work out which it is. Begun doing some of that. I'd love to chat a few more on more ways to improve.
That's very interesting, Peter. As it happens with harvest information standards in the religion area, we had proposed a standard and it wasn't sticking. And we're looking at other ways to help in that area. And one way is to potentially have a crosswalk or a cross-reference that will help people. Anyway, I shouldn't get into that technical detail. Let's move on to the next. I'll take the next 2 together: developing national mission information work and mission information worker training. These were handled together by a panel on the first day. Why are these important? What do we need to learn? And who would be good to teach us?
I can tell you why this is important, and I can share a brief story. When Larry and I were mentors at the Lausanne Young Leaders Gathering in 2016 in Indonesia, the conference organizers allowed participants, these young leader participants, to sign up for mentor hours with those of us who agreed to meet with these younger folks. And 6 young women signed up to meet with me. when they read that my profile included that I had done church and mission research. And all 6 of them had been hired to do research by a nonprofit organization. And none of them knew how to do their job and were suffering because they felt as though they were not producing what was expected of them. They didn't know how to go about becoming competent to produce what was expected of them. And they didn't know who to ask about how to become competent to produce what was being expected of them. But their bosses all knew that they needed to have good research because funding came from sources that required evaluative, reliable evaluations. So this is important because we have folks out there who are trying to do research for the organizations that have hired them that don't know how.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I think it's been said in many ways here in these last 3 days, how we need information to come from the grassroots. And so we need to plant more grass. That's been oft repeated here. And thus we need training, as Stephanie just said.
Thank you.
I think there are also other resources that we haven't tapped into of individuals that actually are highly trained to go out and do evaluation of ministry outcomes and that type of thing that could dramatically enhance the ability to teach others and other ministries on how to actually gather the information, correlate the information, and get it back. And that's something that, you know, at least within OM, that is something very strongly being pushed now is to really evaluate the outcoming of, of an impact of the work that we're doing for our own benefit, not as much as it is for those that, you know, may support us or support work in the field, but for our own information to know that we're doing what needs to be done.
Thanks. I'm going to go on. I think we got time just to go one further down the list. This next one, research impacting gospel advance. This was not handled directly in one of our sessions, but came up in the discussion after one of the days. Can't remember the name of the person who raised it, but anyway, it was well voted for. The idea of we need to research where mission information work or research has impacted gospel advance, has been. So why is that important? We got 19 votes. What do we need to learn in this area? And who would be good to teach us?
I think a lot of that is going to come from just stories from the field. You know, people who, you know, who themselves used research to make strategic decisions. So how we would access that kind of feedback, I'm not sure, because getting those stories from the field is exceptionally hard.
Right.
I think too is the world is moving from a like Western missiological fulcrum, you know, central point to like all the nations, reaching all nations. We don't really have any data that quantifies or evaluates the fruit of the last missions era that helps us set up the next one. I know that's super broad, but any like quantifiable ways we can look at to see, you know, how does missions need to change? What have we done? What data helps us evaluate what has been done and how we did it well and poorly, and how can that help us set up future engagement? Just don't have that information.
Thank you, Danny. I think we need to move on there, but if you have anything you want to feed back to us about these other topics, then please do. Some of them will come up in our next session coming up now, because they were also voted that you wanted to help develop these areas more, but we'll come on to that in a moment. But let us know if you want to join the team that would help to organize the next conference. That would be helpful to know if we have some volunteers. I think that's the end of that slideshow, but Lara, I think we're going straight on to the next, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe you're spot on.
Okay, so just let me load the next one, and I probably need to reshare. Okay. Let's see if I can get it right first time this time.
I'll just I'll just say ahead of time that as we move into some breakouts, there will be a Portuguese language option for those who want to collaborate. Chris will speak more about that, but just to let you know ahead of time that that will be available. So we won't have interpretation, live interpretation during breakouts, of course, but a Portuguese room, Portuguese speaking room.
Okay, I think I've got the right presentation, but I'm in the wrong place. So let me see if I can squeeze back. Yep, here we go. Working together, what can we do together? Okay. I think I've got that filled in right. Okay. We had, and the other set of questions in our survey yesterday were, what do you want to help develop? And these were voted the top in our poll yesterday. Harvest information standards, global gaps, development of national mission information work, people group gaps, Bible and mission information work, researching where mission information work has helped the gospel advance, mission information work and technology, training, Lausanne L4, history, movement data, the funding of MIW, links to leadership. So Lara and I looked at those yesterday quickly and decided that we'd go for some breakouts. So we're going to have two sets of 7 breakout rooms in total each time. And we've selected from the top of those lists. So on the first breakouts, we're going to look at these ones. And we're having, because we can't do interpretation in breakout, we decided to have a separate breakout for the Portuguese language, so that those Portuguese speakers can speak about how things might go forward from a Portuguese speaking point of view. But now, many of you are going to need to make hard choices here about which breakout you join. We're recommending that you choose one and stick with one. But then the question is, what if you want to be involved potentially in more than one of these going forward? This is a list of the second breakouts here: technology, people group gaps, research, mission information work, training, history, funding, and again, we'll have a Portuguese language one. So we thought of this as this is what we want to do anyway. The most important thing about this, which I'll come on to in a moment, is that we connect with each other. Those who are interested in a given area establish connection with each other. That, in our view, is the most important thing to come out of today. So if you want to be involved in more than one of the breakouts that happens at a given time, given we've got the 2 sessions, then leave your name and email in the plenary chat with the name of the topics that you won't be joining, but you want to be connected with. And we'll make sure that you keep connected with those if they go forward. Now, we are not pushing here, we are giving an opportunity. So we're giving an opportunity for like-minded people to come together and discuss, is there something we can take forward together in this area?
Amen.
And I'm sure the conversations under different headings will take quite different routes, and the different conversations with different personalities who end up in the breakouts, you'll also take different routes, I'm sure. But that's what we're looking at. So this will be our minimum instructions in the breakouts. We're going to put a copy of these instructions in the plenary chat. And what we want you to do is all of you can all do this, copy the instructions now, and when you get into the breakouts, one of you paste them in a breakout chat, because the plenary chat and the breakout chat, they never meet. They're held discreetly by Zoom. Now, the most important thing we want is for the group to have the opportunity to continue after the conference ends. Therefore, we want everyone to put your own email into the breakout chat once we start the breakouts, if you're willing to continue to be involved. And after that, it's really up to the people who are there, whoever goes into that breakout. But here are some suggestions. You might want to take note if there are existing initiatives in this area. We're not encouraging duplication of work, so you'd want to liaise with those. You might want to take note of other individuals who should be consulted or invited to join if you're going forward. Clearly, not everyone is going to be here who wants to. You may know people who should be involved. You may want to have some discussion to find out how much you're in agreement about how to tackle this. If there's really no agreement, maybe this is not the time that the Holy Spirit wants us to take this forward. And you may want to arrange a specific time and method to reconvene the team. Now, and then please, everyone, again, in the last 60 seconds or before that, save the chat to your own device, because it will not be saved centrally. So that's what we're planning. Any questions?
You will drop these instructions into the chat.
Yeah, I hope I will. I'm sure I made some attempt to put them somewhere, and I can't remember where.
I've also just done a screenshot, so others might do the same.
Yep, you could do that. I'm gonna try exiting from and so I can't remember where I put them, so I'm going to take them straight from the slide and paste them in. Give me a moment, and I should be able to do this. I'm still open for questions while I'm doing this.
I've got a screenshot. Let me try dropping it.
I think I've just done it in text. That looks good.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good for you to each copy and paste into your own device somehow. Or no, copy, I'm suggesting copy and one of you paste when you get into the breakouts. Okay, we can go back. Let's go back to the list of the first breakouts. Are you seeing the list on the screen?